What's up and welcome to Idle Insights, a show where each week I, Treavor Bettis, talks to interesting people about idle champions and Dungeons and Dragons. And joining me this week is Amanda Hammond. Hello!
Hello, Trevor. It's wonderful to see you and to be on the show.
Oh, well, thank you for being on the show.
Of course.
You are, I think by the schedule, if I remember it, you're the third person from Wizards of the Coast to be on the show right now. But you're the first one that I've gotten to talk to
Oh,
because time
exciting.
travel.
Heck yeah. I will get to ruin your perception of everybody.
I love
I
it.
always love doing that.
Well, I mean, if folks out there don't know who are you for those fine folks who may not
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. So I am a senior designer in the D&D studio at Wizards of the Coast, and what that means is that I'm a book lead. And so I am the lead of projects that you may or may not be familiar with, including Vecna Eve of Ruins, the book.
Ooh,
Yeah,
very
Eve of
timely,
Ruins.
yes.
Yeah, just about to come out or
Oh
has
no,
just
it
come
will
out.
be out when this is showing.
Yeah, it
It
has
is
just come
there.
out. Yes. But I've also worked on other books, including Fandelver and Below, The Shattered Obelisk was a project that I led from start to finish. Keys from the Golden Vaults was co-led with myself and Chris Perkins. We've also done Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos is one I co-led, and there's just been a number of projects throughout the last few
That's
years
so
I've been
cool.
at the company.
So
Yeah.
you've been enjoying D&D books. You got her to thank.
Well, those ones, the other ones, I can't claim credit
Yeah,
for.
that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. But there's a good chance there. So, Amanda, we're gonna be talking about Vecna Eve of Ruin today and all that fun stuff. But I want to start things off with the way that I love starting the show off with, folks. A little icebreaker question: how'd you get into D&D?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like some folks who are esteemed of my generation and before, I started playing D&D when I was about 15 or 16. I think I was not quite yet 16 years old. And I had some friends in the very small town I grew up in, Bryan, Ohio, who had a long-running D&D group. And as I became friends and integrated into that group, I had heard about this game. I thought it sounded kind of cool, but I didn't really know what it was until finally one of them asked me if I was interested in joining. They had an part in the campaign where they needed some new characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so, absolutely, I said yes. I thought this sounded cool, still not really understanding what the game really was.
Mm-hmm.
And this was 3.5
Okay.
edition, so this was back in the early 2000s. And so we literally went over to the friend's house who hosted the games. He played in his basement,
Yes,
literally in
the
his basement.
quintessential.
Yep. We were attacking darkness in a friend's basement. And he had built-in shelves that were sort of all around the basement. And I just remember rows and rows and rows of D&D books. Like this was the friend
Mm.
who had all the D&D books, and everybody came over to use them because not everybody could afford their own books when we were
Mm-hmm.
teenagers. And I remember pulling off that player's handbook from the shelf and leafing through it and having an idea of like, magic is cool. I kind of want to know what that's about,
Yeah.
and just getting engrossed in the description of what D&D is and what player characters are, and the description that this is a narrative similar to a novel or a movie
Mm-hmm.
in which you play through the story and your characters are the heroes. That's what really gripped me. That really appealed to everything that I liked at the time. I loved fantasy. I loved Tolkien. I loved various, dragons and
Oh
dungeons,
yeah. In the
literally.
early 2000s, that was a good time for that to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. So I loved high fantasy. I had fond memories of my mother reading The Hobbit to me when I was in
Ah,
third grade. Yeah. And just thought like, oh my gosh, finally, there's a game here for me. This is exactly what I want to do. And that feeling has just kind of never faded. I've played through many,
that's so
many campaigns,
cool.
many groups, gotten into the industry, and I still feel like this is exactly the kind of thing that I want to be doing.
Hmm.
It's fun.
Yeah, and now I mean you're there like that's a wild that has to be wild to think about, like that first time picking up a book of D&D and be like, oh, this really connects with me, and that's what you do, like.
Yeah. It is a little wild. It's very wild for me that it has come full circle that, I've been in the industry full time as a full-time designer and developer since 2015, but a few years
Mm,
before that as a freelance writer. But I was working on other games, and I have wonderful memories and met wonderful people, and my career
hmm.
was solidified in that environment. but then to go on to Wizards of the Coast and to actually work literally on
Yeah.
D&D and in this IP, in which I remember reading the novels and the stories as a teenager, just getting to work with that stuff. Sometimes I feel like it's my own like realized fan fiction that is now being published.
I know what you mean. I know what you
And
mean.
you've read Vecna Eve of Ruin, I'm sure you can understand. It's just
uh,
wild. It's very cool.
so how did you get your start at WotC? What was it, the you had this work in the industry before that with other games and stuff, and like was it just like a oh, there's an opening, I'm gonna apply, or what happened there?
So, so my first full-time job I mentioned back in 2015 was as an assistant game developer on Pathfinder First Edition for
Oh, okay.
Paizo. Yes, the company behind Pathfinder and
Mm-hmm.
Starfinder. And so I worked for that company full-time for about 5 years and ended up doing lots and lots of different jobs. And I'm sure you can relate, somebody who kind of does everything. But it was all in game design and development. And one of the things I did was co-create the Starfinder RPG.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And so
Very cool.
being on that design team and sort of building a game with disparate elements of other games that we had published, but from scratch, from those
Mm-hmm.
parts, those scrap parts, and sort of building it into its own thing, was a very good experience. And I also had previous experience. I had worked for Cobalt Press when I was a freelancer,
Okay.
leading their very first Kickstarter projects. The very first Kickstarter, by the way, was the Pathfinder First Edition Deep Magic.
Yeah, I think that was Deep Magic. Yeah, I
It
remember
was.
using that in my home
Yep,
game.
and I was the project lead for that book, and that was like just such a learning experience. That was before my full-time Paizo stuff, but that was like we didn't expect that to make over 10K on
Mm,
Kickstarter. It ended up making 126, I think,
yeah.
which for the time was just this
Oh,
massive
yeah.
amount of money.
I remember that being like a big moment in with TTRPGs of like, oh, we can do this now. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And that was sort of the burgeoning stages of realizing that, hey, there's this hunger for TTRPGs where
Yeah.
people will pay and they want to see the creatives have the money to do amazing things that they wouldn't be able to do without that crowdfunding.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a whole bunch of experience. I ended up after Paizo going back over to Cobalt Press, this time full time to be their editorial director to do the high level planning for
Mm-hmm.
their editorial publications, and it was all fifth edition.
Mm-hmm.
And I had only, unfortunately, been doing that for about 6 months when the Wizards job came open.
Oh,
Yes, and I at first wasn't going to apply actually, because it's like, well, I'm happy with this
yeah.
new job. It's a new sort of a new challenge, but it's familiar because I know everybody involved. I was working with my husband, and we weren't married yet, but we were working together, and we were having a great time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, my one of my best friends, F. Wesley Snyder, who actually hired me for my 2015 Paizo job and was my boss for a while. As you can kind of see, the industry is
Yeah.
very
Oh,
cyclical and
yeah.
sort of everybody knows everybody, right? Not always, but that does happen sometimes. He was already over at Wizards and said, "Hey, Amanda, there's another senior job. It's the same job that he had. There's another one open, and I think like you would be great in
Oh,
this. You're the kind of person
wow.
we'd want to hire." And I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I'm not really sure. And then another friend reached out and was like, somebody who's also sort of very influential in the tabletop industry and was like, hey, I think you should apply for this job. I think you could do cool things. I'm like, ah, yeah, wow, now there's a lot of pressure. Oh my gosh, I don't know. And then my husband was like, you really should apply for this job. This is a great
Yeah.
opportunity. Nobody at Cobalt would hold it against you, if you end up getting hired. So then I did apply for it, and the folks were just wonderful during the hiring process. And I already knew a lot of the folks I'd be working with, including Wes, and it was a really good fit. So
That's so
ended up going over
cool.
there.
That's so dang cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is one of those where it's just like, okay, I understand the hesitancy there, but yeah, when you got that amount of people being like, I really think you should do this, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it was one of those like I feel like if I look too closely at this, I'm gonna just really want to, and then I'm gonna have to make a hard decision. And so I'm just not gonna really look into
Yeah,
it. And then the
yeah.
first person says, hey, you should do the thing. And then the second person says, hey, you should do the thing. And then the third person. So
I love it.
yeah, it worked out really, really well. It's been a wild ride, we'll say that.
So what was the first project you got to work on there?
That would be Strixhaven. Strixhaven, A
Okay.
Quick and Love Chaos. I architected the adventure that's in that book. It's about a third of the page count, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. And it's an adventure in which there are four parts to it. Each part is one of the years of school. And that adventure is a lot of fun and is in a style that I think is really useful for DMs in that you can play an individual chapter as basically a standalone. You can distill it down to 2 or 3 sessions as a module, or you can play the whole campaign arc all the way through, and it is a full-length campaign.
Oh, I love that. And I mean, with that style with Strixhaven, I mean, that's perfect.
Yes, and it's very different. I think that's kind of a hallmark of a lot of things I've done for Wizards is that the projects are very self-contained and very specific to what they are. So Strixhaven is very much a sort of a young adult romp through a college campus,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very performative oriented. It's got we've literally sort of created mechanics for relationships in the relationship subsystem and all of the
Mm-hmm.
NPCs. That you can romance or become frenemies with in that system, and that is it's a very social focused type of adventure. And if you contrast that with something like Keys from the Golden Vault,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very heist. Every single adventure in that
Yeah.
anthology, it's all a heist, and you're going along the sort of a heist rhythm of a film or something in which you're going after a MacGuffin or an objective, and getting it out from wherever it's being hidden and getting out undetected. That's a very specific
Yeah.
subgenre of D&D. And so is Phandelver and Below. The Shattered Obelisk turns, very Lovecraftian and
Yeah, it
very,
does. That was
yeah, very
like
horror oriented.
Fandelver, like I have that is a special place in my heart because that starter kit, I've run the beginning of that adventure so many times. I can run it now without the book. Like
That's very cool. That's
I
that's such a great skill to have. So
and
useful when you just need to run
oh
something like,
yeah,
oh,
no,
I'll just
totally.
run the spider encounter, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, we're gonna do the goblin counter, we're gonna go through the forest, we're gonna go with the river that or the little stream that's going into the cave. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Very
so
cool.
when I heard that there was gonna be one that had that and a sequel to it, I was so excited. And I opened it up, I was like, oh my god.
You're like, there's a lot of brains in this book.
There's a lot of brains in this, yeah.
Internally, the art team was referring to it as the moist book because all of the art had all these, just the weird eldritch
we
gunk and horror and
we have a
moistness.
we have an artist on the team at CNE, Cat, and they love like anytime there is like a gross thing, they're like,
Hmm.
let me draw it. And so and I remember there being at some point something that was just like, oh yeah, we're probably not gonna do anything with that, and Cat just be like
Aww. I want to draw gross brains.
but yeah, that is something that from like the projects you're talking about that I really like is that there are it's modular. It has this thing where like a lot of times with books it feels like I don't know if I want to get this one because it is a dedication. We have to go from page one to the ending, and these books that have been coming out recently where it's like you can get this, it's got useful information in it, and you can just kind of piecemeal out what you want to do is I think really great for home tables and stuff. And I especially for people like me who are in their mid 30s and don't have a lot of time as much as I would love to for these things.
Yeah, really, making the DM's life easier is very much what fifth edition is about.
Yeah.
And so that's why you'll find, like you said, a lot of DM-oriented information about how you include certain things or how you can shift storylines. And I think the current mindset of the studio is very much usability, making adventures that will be applicable to as many people who are interested in the theme as possible.
Hmm. I love it.
So I'm glad that works for you.
Yeah. Well, Amanda, why don't we talk about Vecna Eve of Ruin? What is Vecna Eve of Ruin?
Ooh, so Vecna Eve of Ruin is partially our love letter and our opportunity to provide high level adventures for players who have either not gotten ever to that level. We start you out at 10th, and
Hmm.
so you may or may not be playing through levels that you haven't experienced yet, because a lot of adventures are earlier level adventures. So it's part a love level letter to high level adventure play, but it's also partially a love letter to the history of D&D.
Hmm.
There's so much in Vecna Eve of Ruin that you will recognize if you've been a fan of Dungeons and Dragons for any period of time. Even if you've only been playing for a year or two, there will be names that you have probably heard in the vast vaunted halls of conventions or podcasts or actual plays
Hmm.
that will potentially even show up on screen in this book. And so I really hope that this is a way that we're delighting players and surprising them at every turn with this adventure. And that was sort of the goal from day one.
Hmm. That this was a book that I think it got soft announced during the D&D Direct last year, and they're like, we're doing a
Yes, it
Vecna
did.
adventure, and I was
Yep.
that alone, I'm just like, let's go, let's freaking go. And so
Absolutely.
and this was, we knew that this was going to be a book that we were going to do a campaign for in Idle Champions, and like I feel so, I apologize to V Muse, our partner manager, who is in charge, because I was like, do we get the PDF yet? Did we get the PDF yet? I want to read it. Is it here yet?
He's a very good friend of mine, and she definitely mentioned like there's a lot of interest in code names and Vecna of Ruin. I'm like, cool, send them my way. I will absolutely
Yeah.
talk to whoever about this book.
Yeah, well, like, because, like, I mean, like you were saying, like the legendary names in there, and that's one of the things that I really love about D&D is that sort of stuff. Like, I've, heard the names of Vecna, I know stories about it and everything. I've literally never had Vecna in a game, like, and I'm like a forever DM and stuff, and I've been like, oh, I'm too scared to use that one. Like, I want to do that justice and everything like that. And so having a campaign now where it's like, this is the Vecna campaign. Like, you don't
Yes.
got to worry about like homebrewing it and maybe not getting stuff right or anything like that. This is what you can do, and your players can go fight Vecna. And I love the legend of it, because now I think more players are going to have this thing of like, well, what happened when you faced Vecna? What
Yeah.
happened during your Vecna adventure? And those conversations are the
Yes.
things that I love hearing from players.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of room in this book, partially
Hmm.
because it is a high level adventure and player choice really starts to make deviations
Hmm.
important as you get, 10th level and beyond. So there's a lot of different ways that this adventure could end up in the end state. It's kind of a binary, either you stop him or you don't, but the way that you get there can be
Yeah.
a lot of different options, and you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I do. Yeah, and I should mention, we're gonna be very spoiler free on this one. We
Yeah.
we don't want to ruin anything for your home game, or even
Exactly.
while you're playing a solo little idle game. But it's yeah, this adventure has so much in it, and the choice to start it at 10th level, like, that was one of the first things that I saw that made me go, all right, this is it. This is what I was hoping for, because when you have Vecna, like, you've heard all these legends and stuff of him. I mean, like, Critical Role has had Vecna in there as like the big bad and everything like that. And so I was worried that this was going to start level 1 and we were going to see Vecna for like the longest time. But it's like, no, we're halfway there. We are going to 20. Like,
Yep.
this is happening. And
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
not a slow burn. Like, that's the thing. That's
No.
what I love. It just hits the ground running.
Yep, there's a bit of the adventure in which you are your 10th level characters and you're tooling around Neverwinter and your big dang
By
heroes,
the way,
right? And
thank you for doing Neverwinter. I've wanted
oh, I love
Neverwinter in a
Neverwinter.
pre-written book for so long. I love it so much.
Neverwinter it's been fleshed out in so many different IPs, right?
Yeah.
And so many different licensed products. And, everybody, you probably remember the Neverwinter Nights
Yep.
video games. And, Neverwinter is this beloved locale. But you're right, we haven't really visited it that much in recent years. And it was one that, it has a special place in my heart as well from a
Mm.
nostalgia standpoint. And so I thought, what better place to set the very beginning of all of this and sort of set the player characters along that crash course that eventually ends at 20th level against Vecna. What better place than Neverwinter?
Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, there's like again, I don't want to go into spoilers, but yeah, just even with Neverwinter, y'all did stuff that I'm like, that's what I wanted to see in this. This is so cool.
Oh, are you talking? And I don't think this is a spoiler because I just did a video about it.
Okay, okay.
So, are you talking about going into Evernight?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I will fully admit, and I'm gonna look you Idle Champions players in the eyes. I did have to cut that part in the adventure. I'm so sorry. It
Oh
killed me
no.
inside because I love Evernight, but there's a lot in this adventure.
It's huge. It's a massive
Yeah.
256 page adventure. There's a big bestiary at the back as well, and a
Yeah.
character dossier, but
Oh,
it's
the
a lot of
character
content.
dossier is so cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean that was the thing. And when I pitched this book, it from the very beginning, the pitch included we are going to include lots of iconic characters, some of which will actually be plot points and will participate in the story of the adventure. And for players and DMs who may not know that much about these characters, sometimes may have never heard of some of these
Hmm.
characters, there is going to be a dossier in the end of the book, which is full of beautiful arts and has got this lore of all these characters so that nobody goes into this and feels left out or feels that sort of uncomfortable, unpleasant sense of like, well, I should know this thing about something I'm a fan of, but I don't because of
Hmm.
whatever reason. Like we don't want anybody to feel that way. So
I
now
love
it's
that.
all in the back of the book.
That's perfect. That's a great way to. I mean, that's great for DMs and players alike. Like that's fantastic. But yeah,
Yes.
the Evernight thing, like it's so funny. Like that there's so many things in this book that line up. It's so weird with things that I've done in my home game that like
Oh, that's
and even
cool.
things that I've wanted to do in it. Because like I got into D&D in 4th edition and like I think like a Shadowfell book had just come out and like it had Evernight in there and I'm like this is the coolest thing ever. It's so dark and gritty.
It's metal.
Yeah, it's so metal.
It is. Yeah, I love it.
And so like to get the city that I love so much with the Shadowfell version of it and then where you go off from that. I mean do, ha, okay, this is the question that I would ask. Have you all talked about the MacGuffin in this adventure? Is that something we can talk about?
The Rod of Seven Parts? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep, that's totally cool.
Okay.
The
I
entire adventure, most of it is structured around finding each piece of the rod, which
mm-hmm.
is again an artifact from D&D's history.
It is.
That
What
did not
was
have fifth edition stats, but now it does.
yeah, and
Mhm.
that was something that I wanted to bring up real quick. It was like, I want to talk about like what it was like leading this, but like was the rod something that was talked about at the beginning, or was that sort of a oh, this fits perfectly here for this adventure?
It was a little bit of both. And so the early pitches of the book involved, throwing around sort of ideas for high level adventure content. And essentially I was charged with coming up with a pitch for studio leadership for an adventure that would be part of the 50th anniversary celebration that would go to multiple campaign settings. And that was essentially all
Okay.
that they wanted to make sure was in this pitch. Everything else was sort of built from that foundation. So I was chatting with other folks I worked with about, I've been thinking kind of here and there. I wanted Vecna to be the bad guy from the very beginning. I wanted,
Heck yeah.
the different campaign settings to play into the overall story in the modular way that they do that you'll see
Hmm.
in the book. But there's also kind of an open question. There's something else really big I wanted to do, and I think it was James Wyatt who actually mentioned like, the Rod of Seven Parts would be like a cool thing to potentially maybe go find, and it makes sense, and even from lore, its pieces are
Yeah.
all across the multiverse, and then that spark of that suggestion was like, that's perfect. I know exactly what I want to do with this thing.
That's awesome.
And it went from there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the rod is one of those magic items that I've even seen that come up as a joke in like media, and I'm like,
Yes,
what the
yeah,
heck? Like, yeah, there's just a rod of 7 parts joke in Futurama or something like that.
yeah. Oh
Like,
gosh, I think the Rod of Seven Parts is in one of the Munchkin games. Like,
yeah.
it's definitely like a thing that people remember, and
Hmm.
that there are references that are, continuously made. So it made sense. And then I went back and read through the old second edition module, the original Rod of Seven Parts module, to see what did the rod do. And just got really fascinated with the lore of that, and worked that pretty heavily into Vecna Eve of Ruin. Um, the lore that the Rod of Seven Parts was originally the Rod of Law that was used to
Hmm.
seal an ancient demon lord away to win the battle between good and evil,
Hmm.
essentially. And Miska, that demon lord, the wolf-headed demon lord, is still trapped where he was
Mm.
trapped with the rod those millennia ago, and that plays into the book as well. It's very cool to interface with all of that.
Heck yeah. Um,
Yeah.
it was like I was saying a little while ago is that like there's so much in this book that has like mirrored things that I've done in my campaigns or wanted to do. Like literally last year, I finished a campaign. We went to level 20, and like we were picking back up at 13. I was like, well, I've got 7 levels. Oh, Rod 7 parts. I'm just gonna have them
Yep.
go after that. So like it's so funny like getting to write this one and talk so much about the Rod of 7 parts. I'm like, oh yeah, I just did this. I just get to bring this to work now.
That's so fun. That's so fun. I'm really glad that, and that's kind of what I hope this book does for a lot of folks, is that it really springboards off of some of those ways that the lore has been used in the home games and
Hmm.
coalesces things. And so DMs can sort of weave their own storylines within this one, because the overall meta plot is the meta plot, but there's a lot of room for, if you've got something from your home campaign that you want to make reference to, or you want to pull in some kind of side NPC or something, like
Yeah.
there's definitely room for that.
Oh yeah. This the adventures that we've done recently for Idle Champions, we did this Light of Xerxes. I was like the Spelljammer one. No, we did Light of Xerxes and Turn of Fortune's Wheel,
Oh, nice.
which were more condensed adventures for the
Yeah.
set books. And so and those were the two that like I came in writing on for this. And so now to have like this big adventure book with so much in there, I'm like, oh man, there is so much to do. We gotta get this stuff in there.
It's so meaty. It's so
Yes,
meaty.
yes, exactly. So as the lead, what is the process like of making this book? Like you're talking about that they said, we want this adventure to go to multiple realms. We want it to be high level, and you're coming up with the idea. But like, what does the rest of that process look like for you?
Well, once the initial pitch gets accepted by leadership, then it's down to essentially go into the minds and create an outline for this entire book. And then the production team goes in the background and builds a schedule for it. And they typically sort of pick the release date for the book, and they kind
Okay,
of build backwards. And this one, I
okay,
think the release date shifted a couple of times. And so we ended up, I think, releasing it a little bit later than we were originally going to. But ooh, sorry about that.
that's okay.
Oh, my ears fell out. So so yeah, it's just going into the mind and then creating an outline and fleshing out things a little bit more, doing lots and lots of background research and making sure that the lore is 100%, on target of what we've presented in the past, and marrying it a little bit with the way we need to present things in fifth edition. And then assembling a writing team is a big step after
Yeah,
that
I
the
bet.
outline happens. The outline gets approved. There's approvals, along every step of the way. But then assembling a writing team, and I run projects in which we essentially have a writer's room while the writing is ongoing.
Oh,
And so, like, all of our writers were on staff for this book, which is wonderful. It's a great way to communicate with folks. And every week we would have an hour to an hour and a half of sitting around, and people would send topics that they want to talk about or that they would need input on, and we would have those discussions. And people were writing their things independently. And there's a lot of sort of horse trading and asking somebody, hey, do you have an NPC that I can slot into this chapter? So but yeah, we brought it all together, and everybody wrote like big chunks. I think we've got 4 or 5 writers on
hmm.
this book. If you've got the PDF in front of you, it would be awesome to list those names of
I
folks.
actually do have the PDF because again,
Yeah.
we are living in the sad past where the book is not available and out. But I do have a PDF here. Let's see. I can find this, I swear.
Yeah, we got Mackenzie DeArmas, we
Mackenzie de
got
Armas,
Ron
Rod
Lundeen,
Lundeen,
yeah,
Patrick
Patrick Rennie,
Rennie. Yeah, there we
yeah,
go.
Patrick Rennie, yep, and
We got
myself.
yeah. Sorry, my eyes started going cross looking at it because I'm like, ah. But yeah, so Mackenzie DeArmas, Ron Lindy, Patrick Rennie, and yourself.
Yeah.
So you that was the writers' room for this.
Yes, exactly. So, that's not a ton of people for a
Yeah,
256 page book. So people were
yeah.
writing really big chunks of stuff. I was writing the very story continuity heavy chapters. So those anchor chapters, which are, getting into Inside Baseball. Chapter 2 is like a huge story chapter. A whole bunch of stuff happens, sets up the
I
next part
literally
of the book.
just finished doing that one.
Yeah, it's not page count wise that much longer than the others, but it
But
is
it's a lot.
just dense. Yeah. So that one, chapter 9, is another, very heavy lore one. There's an introduction section to discuss, helping DMs help their players create characters for this, and how you create a 10th level character, and what sort of backgrounds are helpful, and what are ways to explain why these characters are in Neverwinter, for them to then become fatalistically linked to Vecna.
Hmm.
And just sort of, yeah. So I work on that stuff. The other folks work on chapters set in various settings and dungeons, and we just back and forth until the whole thing is written. And then I have a period of time for knitting it all together and developing the manuscript, getting it ready for editing. And then it goes to editing.
Yeah.
And then at Wizards, the book lead does something called book building, in which we actually create the InDesign files and flow the text in, and
Mm.
create placeholders for the art.
Oh, okay. So
I do the
you
whole
get to
art
see
order.
get to kind of see what it's gonna look like.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So the lead's very hands-on from beginning all the way through until we get to the printout reviews, which is where big galleys of pages of the entire book are printed out, and there are multiple reviewers that go through it to make sure that they're familiar with and comfortable with everything in the book, and also that there are no like errors that have slipped through that
Yeah.
we try to correct at the last minute.
That's fascinating. Because, like, I'll be honest, like, one of the things that I've always wondered for so long is, like, how these books come together and, like, what writing on this looks like. And that really is fascinating to, like, and it makes sense when you think about it, of, like, the lead person who's doing the story stuff is working on these specific things. You have people that are working on the stuff in between it. Like, I can imagine Mackenzie working on like one of the locations that they go to and stuff like
Yep.
that. That's
Yes.
really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very fun. There's a lot of other stuff that I didn't mention that's part of the process. There's the art director for this book was Kate Irwin,
Hmm.
who did just this wonderful job taking, this massive art brief document that I wrote, and finding amazing artists for the book to look just absolutely beautiful.
Oh
You've
yeah.
got the PDF there. There are things that are done visually with this book that haven't been done before. And I think the book just looks really, really beautiful. Tristan Falcone was the graphic designer who
Oh,
really
we love
brought
Tristan.
all that together. Yeah, yeah, Tristan's so much fun to work with. Yeah.
There is I'm not going to spoil what it is, and I'm sure you're going to know what it is. There is one map in this one that is hard to look at because it is
Really?
it's well it's a little it's slightly grotesque in ways.
Oh my gosh. Ah, so you say
It's
grotesque maps, and
it's
all I can think of
the
is a Shadow
it's the
Novelist.
location of the second piece of the rod.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Okay, got
Yeah, I
it.
that's the one that I'm currently working on. I'm just like, oh, Cat's gonna have fun with this one.
Yeah. I don't think it's too big of a spoiler. We can tell people that's the Spelljammer section.
Yes, yeah, the Spelljammer section. There is a Spelljammer that crashed into a thing. Oh, I'm looking at the map right now. Cat's gonna have so much fun.
I was describing that location yesterday, and we were like, it's an asteroid, except for when you get onto it and you find out it is absolutely not an
It's not an
asteroid.
asteroid at all. It's
No,
not. If there's an opposite of an asteroid, it's this.
asteroids don't breathe. Uh,
I love it. So one of the things that I did want to talk to you about with this, with that process in mind and the lead role that you have. When I got the role as content designer and writer here, the executive producer Chris Dupuy was like, "Hey, I want you to think of yourself as like the DM for the Isle Champions community. Like you're taking these books, you're doing kind of the process you do at home of like deciding what the home game's gonna do." Did you have that feeling at all being the lead on this of like I'm gonna design this adventure for people to play at their home?
I think so. Yeah, yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting it. I have been writing and creating adventures for a really long
Yeah.
time. And so I think that that is sort of in the background when you're creating, especially the bones of an adventure like this one that is really big and that has got very big multiverse affecting events that are
Mm-hmm.
going on and that have got these really iconic characters in it. There's definitely a sense of stewardship of not only the game but also the history of the game as well. And so there is a little bit of a like, maybe DMs who feel like you said a little bit sort of intimidated by the fact that oh there's these massively popular and historical characters and I want to make sure that like I don't ruin it. Like first of all,
Yeah.
there is no way that you can do that. Anything that you do at your table is great and is fun, and as long as everybody
100%.
is having a good time, you should feel free to do that. But I definitely understand the reality that there's a lot of players who are feeling like they don't want to do it wrong, that they
Yeah.
don't want to not do it justice. And so having this now as the official Vecna adventure, the official 20th level Vecna adventure, definitely was more pressure than normal.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was a good sort of like, I hope that I do this in a way that is enjoyable and surprising and interesting and is something that, players will continue to go back to way, way, way into the future. I
Yeah.
hope so.
Well, and I think like again, this starting at 10th level, I think this has so much room for that to happen because I mean, a DM can see this and be in the middle of a campaign and be like, "Oh, you know what? We're actually tying up this part of the story. This can be my ending, the big ending that we
Yes.
need for
Yeah.
this." Because like you were saying, it has multiversal effects like, and that is what I feel 10 to 20 should do. Like those are like the big hero moments where
Yeah.
it's not just Faerun that's in trouble, it's everything that's in trouble.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and I agree with you as well. I feel like 20th level characters are essentially demigods. They're
Yeah.
essentially the Greek heroes,
Yeah.
right? In the world, there are no 20th level adventurers. In the static campaign settings, there are none. And if there are any, there's like two or three of them maybe, and they're flying out into doing 20th level stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're Elminster who's going to hell,
Yeah.
they're there are all of these
Exactly.
other characters. Um, and I feel like a 20th level adventure needs to be more than just we're gonna go fight the dragon or we're
Yeah.
gonna go thwart the evil king. Like, putting Vecna, if he's gonna show up and he is literally a god, even at the beginning of this adventure, the characters need to be 20th level if they've even got a chance.
Yeah.
And even then, right?
And even then it's like, well, I hope this goes well.
Exactly, exactly.
I love it. Yeah, that is. I think that is going to be a great gift for a lot of DMs who are looking for that big finish for their long running campaign.
Yeah, and another point, this is something that, was discussed earlier on. There's a number of Wizards adventures that end at 10th, 11th, or
Yeah,
12th level, like the Shattered Obelisk ends at 12th level. And so we actually have got an acknowledgement and some advice in the Vecna Eve of Ruin book that's allows some adjustment of the first couple of chapters. So if you're wanting to take characters from a previous adventure that has been published and you want those characters to play through these events, you absolutely can, and it makes 100% sense when you read why the characters are on this crash course with Vecna. It's not just a random, hey,
yeah.
these brave heroes are going to go thwart this bad guy. There's a
Hey,
reason
guys,
they
want
are
to go
the
fight a
only
demigod?
ones. Exactly, yes. There's because otherwise it wouldn't make a lot of sense. It's
Yeah.
like, well, why hasn't just some other really powerful NPC dealt with this already? There's a reason why only your player characters can save the multiverse.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And you're completely right there because like that's what I ended up happening with my home campaign is I ran a few other pre-written adventures and we got to like 13th level and I was like, well, the only thing I really have that I could run that's pre-written is Dungeon the Mad Mage, but I
Yep.
want it to be a bit grander. And so like
Yes.
now I'm kicking myself. I'm like, oh, I should have waited a little bit longer.
I mean, you take those 13th level characters and shift them over to Vecna if you want to.
Well,
The
that was
thing.
the thing. Like that was the Rod of Seven Parts one that I did was to finish up that one. But
Oh,
now,
I see. Okay,
and
okay.
so now I'm like, well, now I need to get another group up to 10th level so I can do this one.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and it's all open-ended. There's
Hmm.
a lot of acknowledgement that this is, the cycle of the edition has been 8, 9 years at this
Yeah.
point. We know that folks have got characters of all kinds of levels that, they just sort of put aside because they're starting a different game. So, everybody should feel free to pick up those 10th level characters that finished whichever adventure and go, these are the guys now who are going to be going through this, if that's something that interests characters and players.
Hmm. So we've been non-spoilery, but I did want to ask this question: what is something that you are excited for players to experience from this book?
Ooh, I think it's the realization that once it becomes clear that this is a world hopping adventure to rebuild this artifact, that each piece of the rod is its own special magic item. It's not an artifact, but it is its own special magic item. It's got stats, and there's a story that's been built around each piece of this of the rod. And so each location that you're going to retrieve a piece of the rod, they have their own things going on in
Yeah.
that campaign setting, right? There are bad guys, there are good guys, there are things that these special magic items are being used for, and they're very powerful in their own right. And the player characters get to walk into this ongoing situation, these living, breathing worlds to determine what is going on and how are they going to be able to get this piece. And is it a negotiation with the powerful forces that have already got possession of the rod piece to explain to them why they need it? Is it a big fight with a big bad guy who's trying to use the artifact piece to do something terrible in their own setting? Is it a heist mission where they just sneak in and sneak out? You going to steal a piece of the rod from Tiamat? I don't know. You going to do that? I think that's probably the most interesting thing, is to see how the players are interested in each individual
Yeah.
story, and really like experience the differences and the unique pieces of each of these settings.
Yeah. Like I'm not gonna spoil what it is, but like I said, I've been working on I guess it's the third chapter. It's the Spelljammer one. Like that's the one that I'm
Yes.
currently working on
Yep.
for the
The
game.
actual scene.
And it was when I started reading that, I was like, oh, the rod isn't just here. Like it's here because it was being used. I
Yes.
and that was another thing where I was kicking myself like, I didn't have anybody using the rod in my adventure. They were just there. Why didn't I do that? And it makes so much sense. Like when you read where these are, like it makes sense and what's going on there, and you can see why. Oh, we can't just go get it. We can't just go
Yes.
there, get the piece, get out. Like they're like, and what's preventing you from doing it makes sense in world. And I really love and commend y'all for that work on that.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you like that, because I do feel like while the campaign aspect, the campaign launching aspect of the Rod of Seven Parts has always been pretty clear in the lore, that it might be a little bit unclear to players. Like you said, they might just expect, oh, well, I've got this piece of the rod and it's pointing me to the second piece of the
Yeah.
rod. So I'll just go there and I'll just grab it, and it'll be like one dungeon that we'll have to go through, and that is not the case in
Mm-mm.
any of the pieces. So I think it'll be really interesting to kind of see the reckoning with, like, oh, this is a task, this is a Herculean monumental task.
It's a good thing we are over 10th level now. Yes.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And just the fact that it does take so long and so much effort to rebuild this rod, I think makes the later parts even more interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and I also like I like that that y'all did like, and obviously it was going to be in this, but like we got art now of the Rod of Seven Parts. Like when I
Yes.
was doing this, I was like, I think this is like a fan image. I'll just show them this. And so like now that it's like, no, this is the official 5th edition Rod of Seven Parts. It looks
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, there was a lot of just love and care that went into what the rod actually looks like. There was a concept art period, and that was one of the things that was
Oh.
gone over many, many times with our concept artists. And there was a reimagining of the look of the rod, because it's sort of shown up looking kind of different ways throughout the
Hmm.
different editions of D&D. But there was just a lot of visual care put into what it looks like, and each piece is looks, like it's part of a whole, but has got a distinct look to it. There's a specific rune on each piece,
Hmm.
so the characters know which piece they've already got in their possession. And there's just a lot of stuff going on in the background that Kate and the artists and other folks who worked on the book did a really, really good job. I feel like they fell in love with this book as much as I did, which
Oh, I
you
love
can
that.
really see in
Yeah.
the images.
Oh yeah, the artwork in this is fantastic, and like one of the things that I will do when I get a book is like I do kind of just like a flip through. Like I'm not reading in depth, but I'm just kind of going through and seeing what's in there. And the art in this one, I think I stopped more times than in most other D&D books, because I would like there's definitely one part later in the book that I turn the page like, well, okay, I have to read in depth on this. What is happening here?
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I am so glad that did that, because that's what the art is meant to do, right?
Yeah.
Is meant to make you feel excited and intrigued and illustrate what's going on. I have a question for you. I'm going to turn the tables if we have a
Oh.
second.
Okay, yeah.
It's an easy one, don't worry.
Okay.
So the new Vecna image
Mm.
is absolutely gorgeous. Kieran Yanner is the artist, and he did that purple and pink
Yeah.
look to Vecna, treatment of Vecna on the cover. Got a lot of interesting feedback about those images at PAX Unplugged, because we put that art on some
Yeah.
banners to help, promote some of the upcoming 50th stuff. So new Vecna, sexy or not sexy?
Oh, well, see, here's the funny thing for it. And now, I mean, players, you may have already seen this. I don't know. I might put a joke in there about this. So in the Idle Champions adventure, there's two Vecnas.
Oh,
Because
exciting.
like I was telling you beforehand, there we had a Vecna adventure last year,
Hmm.
and Aaron wrote Vecna in a very different way than most. Like he infamously at one point ends a sentence by going Vecna out and then just leaves the room.
I love
It's
that though. That's fun.
and so, I really loved what you all were doing with Vecna in this. And my answer is new Vecna is hot. But
And there we go.
I didn't want to ruin that with, like him showing just be like Vecna out. And so
Smoke bomb.
I actually have it where like y'all's Vecna, it already won in a different multiverse and has
Okay.
come to this one to do the same thing and just kind of show off this other Vecna and be like, you're nothing compared to me. So like
Oh, I love that.
raise
That is very Vecna as well. That
yeah
is very much in his sort of egotistical, entitled, self-centered
yeah
motivation. I love that.
so it's not just like, oh, I'm a Vecna that is taking over the multiverse.
I
I'm
am
also
the
just
Vecna.
I'm the Vecna. Like
Yeah.
you other Vecnas, you mean nothing to me.
Imposters.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean
Pathetic
like
imposter.
and that was the thing that I really did appreciate is like y'all did, because we had that redesign that came out last year or the year before, and this version of him has that but has more to it. Like you've got like
Oh, you
kind of
mean the
like the
Vecna
hood.
dossier, right? Yeah, the
Yeah,
one
yeah,
that was
yeah,
released with the Stranger Things
yeah.
a season. Yeah. No, yeah, I'm very familiar with that. We
And
sort of looked at that in the stat block that we used.
yo, oh, I didn't think about comparing that. I am. But yeah, like the hood with it, the pauldrons and everything. Like this is a Vecna that means business, and I
Yeah.
like that
Yep.
he has that look from the get go with it. So yeah, of course, cooler Vecna is gonna be the hotter Vecna.
Nice.
um,
I just loved that feedback after doing the PAX Unplugged reveals, and sort of was just scrolling through feedback from the convention, and just saw several tweets like, "Why is the new Vecna sexy? Oh my god!" Like, you know what? I'm here for that. I think that's
I just imagine the dude that played Vecna in Stranger Things seeing those tweets and be like, "Wait, they replaced me? Who's what? Huh? Who's hotter than me?"
there was a specific editor on staff as well who was like, "Are we gonna do the sexy version of Vecna?" And then that art came back, and it was like, I don't know if this is a coincidence or
We're gonna do the
intentional.
sexy version of Vecna. I love it. Well, now I have to see if I can find a way to work that joke into Idle Champions.
Sexy Vecna.
Yeah.
He's too sexy for his hand and eye.
I love it. Well, I mean, we're running out of time here. We got another show coming up after this one when it premieres. But thank you so much for joining me today and talking about this. This was an absolute blast.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for your interest, and I'm just happy to be on the show. Thanks so much, Trevor.
If people want to find you and what you do on the interwebs, where could they do so?
Ooh, I am on Twitter, although not as much as I used to be, at Amanda Hammond. Otherwise, Vecna's where it's at. I'll be doing interviews for quite a while,
Heck yeah.
leading up to and after the release.
Yeah. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Idle Insight. So until next week, take care of yourself.